thanks everyone for coming. My name is Kilgore. I'm an evangelist for Powerhouse and for what we're calling scalable network organizations. I know this is a very Powerhouse heavy crowd, so this is a little bit preaching to the choir, but we've really had a lot of work done the last week on this, having an offsite and going to different conferences. So in a lot of ways, I think this is us moving things forward in a lot of different areas. To get us started, we're going to hear a bunch of cool things from Layer T and Prometheus off of what we're building, but I just wanted to kind of set the stage a little bit with called The Blind Man and an Elephant parable. I don't know if everyone has heard this or their childhood. Basically, it's four blind men come across an elephant. They've never seen an elephant before, right? So they have no idea what it is. One of them feels the trunk and is like, this feels like a snake. And another one feels the tail and is like, this feels like a rope. And then another one feels like the body. It's like, this is some wall of some kind. And of course, none of them had this concept of what an elephant is. They're just using their own experiences to talk about what they're feeling. And I feel like with Powerhouse, a little bit for a lot of us, we've all had this one part of the elephant that we're touching, and we have a little bit of understanding on that. But I think the last week and what we're trying to do here is really paint a whole picture of what the whole elephant is. And that's challenging here, but we have some beginnings of that process here. So the first one we're going to start with here is Layer Zero, who is going to be presenting on the decentralized DAO operations and the future of work. So Leia, we're spinning.
Thank you very much, Igor, and thank you very much all for coming to our brunch. Serve yourself. We have delicious brunch bags and beverage, so please serve yourself. And welcome everybody to our presentations. So I'm going to start today's session talking about the operations and the future of work. And two agenda points. First, I'm going to talk about the infrastructure, the procurement infrastructure that we are designing for MakerDAO and for DAOs in general. And then there's a second topic that maybe we will touch later on today's agenda is about insurance and risk management. So we all know that DAOs are great. We all love DAOs. DAOs are a revolutionary organizational structure, very novel organizational structure that enables us to have a shared ownership on assets, shared governance on assets that enables us to accrue value collectively. These are totally open democratic organizations globally that do not discriminate people from our origins or nationality or social class. So these are great novel organizational structures, but at the same time, DAOs are bad at certain things. DAOs are bad at executing work. We come from MakerDAO and Powerhouse. To give a bit of context, our origins, Powerhouse is the spin-off of a core unit, what's called the Sustainable Ecosystem Scaling core unit, SES core unit at MakerDAO. And our mission at Powerhouse is to build the operational infrastructure for Maker. Maker is undergoing probably the most ambitious restructuring process in the crypto industry. And this is what probably many of you have heard about Maker's Endgame. And under Maker's Endgame, MakerDAO is outsourcing or spinning off all the previous operational units, what we call it the core units. That includes ourselves. So we are building the operational dashboard for Maker that includes technical infrastructure, organizational infrastructure, and legal infrastructure for everything's done. So DAOs are great for mutualizing ownership and governance, but DAOs are not great at allocating resources. We saw at MakerDAO a lot of the dysfunctionalities of orders. Well, I think if you step back, you'll yeah, well, because here it's the feedback. I see. Okay, you must mistake. Okay, and we saw in MakerDAO how can governance turn into dysfunctional governance or toxic governance in discussions in the forums. So what our house is designing is this framework so DAOs can do what they do at best, and all of the other processes that are outsourced to our operational platform. This is what many of you know, the tragedy of commons. Tragedy of commons is in typical problem in game theory that says that it is for an actor, it is the typical example of fish in a pond, right? If we have a resource that can be depleted and there is no coordination, infrastructure, then it is rational to get the most what I can. Individually, if you can maximize your individual utility function, then you start fishing up many fish. But the problem is, if everybody does the same, then the fish will be depleted and the system collapses. So it is rational from a gateway perspective to privatize the benefits and to socialize the cost that is upon. That is I'm going to describe in Tragedy of Commons. And in DAOs, that happens often with things like budgets. Budget is a common resource that can be depleted, and you see later DAOs, we saw that later, but in many other DAOs, there's fight over the resources that could turn into like political discussions or dysfunctional governance processes. So the way out of the tragedy of commons, you can privatize the goods or you can regulate them. And our house believes that DAOs need structured networks. The DAOs are networks, and networks can be structured. And this is a typical evolutionary path of networks where we first have like scattered nodes, then we have nodes that emerge, we have then a multi-house structure, and then the successful networks evolved to this like more sophisticated structure which have multiple hubs with multiple relations between them, and then we have a very with more scarce relationship. So we believe, and we're designing a network for procurement and for production at DAOs. Maybe I can this one, if you can see one. So this is the overview of the platform. And this platform, what our house is designing, is a platform for coordinating work for DAOs, coordinating procurement, and coordinating operations. So we see here in this chart are like a marketplace. It is a decentralized platform where we see the different sides of the market. We see here on the bottom, on the green part, the supply side of the market. So we have a bunch of contributors. This could be annual contributors in different countries of the world. This could be also traditional companies. And these suppliers want to supply work for a DAO. What happens that is not an easy task. Oftentimes, they are working for a DAO involves either risk or it involves operational complexities, or if you are an annual contributor, how do you do with contract signing and so on. So we are creating 3 hubs, and these hubs, the operational hub will be the first one that we will incorporate, and the mission of these hubs is to coordinate work. The operational hub will coordinate the suppliers, will coordinate the contributors. What that means is that if you're a contributor, you're a developer, you can sign agreements with this operational hub. And this operational hub will take care of the payments, will take care of the invoicing, will take care of the legal contracts and all, like the operational overhead. And also the legal overhead, you can have a legal entity that you can sign contracts with, or you can invoice so that is the operational hub. So the operational hub will structure and coordinate the supply network. Then we have on the left part, the blue part, the demand side of the market. And in the right side of the market, we have clients. This would be DAOs that are ready to pay for services, but the same thing as for contributors. They also oftentimes have trouble by acquiring services on the market because many DAOs are not structured as legal entities, cannot sign contracts. So we'll create this second hub that is called the Revenue Generating Hub. This will be also a legal entity, and this legal entity will commercialize products, and all of this is open source. All of this is fully code. And this Revenue Generating Hub will take care of this like downstream part of the value chain. Right? As you see, this is like a huge value chain that we are unbundling in different pieces. And so we have the Generating Hub. This will be the legal counterparties for DAOs when a DAO wants to acquire a product or service on the market. So this will be the entity that will have all the legal liability, the regulatory liability, for example, taxes, for example, if it's consumer protection, if it's data privacy, or whatever type of legal or regulatory obligations that will be absorbed by this hub. So a DAO, if a DAO needs a legal counterparty, it will have this legal counterparty, and they will be responsible for regulatory or legal obligations. This is the Revenue Generating Hub. On the right side, we have what we call the Operational Collateral Fund. This is also a hub for investors. So we have investors that will be VCs or be financiers, and also they don't have like an appropriate legal vehicle, or they don't have the capacity of deciding the capital allocation. So this Operational Collateral Fund will take funds from investors. These investors will provide seed funding, and it will be channeled and organized through the Operational Collateral Fund, which, as the other three hubs, the two hubs, it will be a legal entity with second necessary contracts. And on the top, we have a new DAO that will, when spin off, it will be the Powerhouse DAO, and it will own a platform. So all of this you can imagine as a platform business model, but it's very different from the Web 2 business models, platform business models that are owned by a corporation. In this case, the platform itself will be decentralized and will be owned by the DAO, and there will be governance components which will have a control function on the platform. There's also one other aspect that's not mentioned here, that is all the intellectual property, as this is going to be open source. Then there will be an intellectual property ID, SPV, to set up, and this SPV will be controlled by the Powerhouse DAO. And this SPV will grant licenses to different regulatory Revenue Generating Hub. That it will be the entity in charge of commercializing and monetizing the products. Another way you can think about this as a way of making public goods monetizable, a way of enabling business models on top of open source, which is one of the biggest unresolved problems in crypto. So one big aspect is like the operational platform, procurement platform, legal infrastructure, but on the other hand is a machine for making business models on top of open source and on top of public goods. It's a machine for funding and allocating public goods, which is, I think, a very important vision. Do you have, listen, Rodney, if you have any questions or comments? So this is like a summary of the platforms we're unbundling the value chain, and a very simple way to put it is that the operational network builds the revenue network sells, the operational platform fund funds, and the DAO controls and governs the platform. So this is a very general purpose platform, and our vision is to deploy many different platforms for creating marketplaces. We could envision that this could be used for provision of all type of services and products, for DAOs, for consulting services, for decentralized operations, grants, so capital allocations, governance, legal services, and so on. We are going to learn later more on the tech part, because this is an important component. We are creating not only the organizational and legal infrastructure, but also a technical infrastructure for operations and for allocation of resources. So that's what I have for the legal ends of the operational design. You have some questions?
Yeah, maybe I'm going to ask a question I think T asked very well. Of those four different entities, which one is going to be, it's like the most difficult or tricky from the legal side of things? we've got the revenue generating hub, the operational hub, the OCF, and then the SPE for the IP. Which one of those and why is like the most challenging, or could present the most challenging one?
Well, probably, I would say probably the operational platform is the one that also incorporates more regulatory implications. And the operational hub and the revenue generating hub will be very, very lightweight entities. The idea is to give, depending on which side of the market you are, to give you all the tools that you need for doing your work, which includes templates, legal templates for signing contracts or creating new entities that you eventually could need if you want to get work with DAOs. For example, for the operational hub, the first entities that we're going to use are Swiss associations. And Swiss associations are great because you can create them as a contract. So you have, if it's non-profit, you can even create it by contract. Not you'll be required to file it in the commercial registry. But if you later on need more things, you will need the commercial registry, your registration. But in principle, they are very lightweight entities. So we are looking for these type of entities in friendly jurisdictions that will be set up and wind down very, very easy. And the same goes for the revenue hub. The operational platform fund is a bit more complex because you will involve investments, it will involve VCs, and probably we have not decided yet on the leader for that one. But we got in mind that we have to be more careful, and it will be a bit more complex to structure this. But for the regulating hub and operation hub, it will be very, very backward in itself. And that is the idea. The part of the idea regarding also the Cuba services is to create open source templates for contract agreements for multi-sig signers. So we all work with open source templates from its fund. And the idea is to put at the disposal of contributors all these templates settings for contracts or for entity and incorporation of units.
Yes, one other question is the relationship between the different entities. Is that exclusive in some way, or could it also be that operational hub says, I now collaborate with another revenue generating hub, or can there be multiple relationships between?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. One of the key features is that there's no exclusivity, so there's some that free market dynamics in there, and there will be a pressure on the specific hubs. So there will be many rules. It is in some way like a regulated system, and I don't want to go into the complexities of the interactions, but basically the funds, the idea is that we will have initial funding coming from investors. So the first money on very flow will come through the operational hub, and this operational hub will provide initial funding for contributors. We want to give contributors the security that they have as a stable income, and this stable income will be provided in initial flow from investors. And then in the second monetary flow would come from the paying clients. The paying clients will talk with a revenue generating hub that commercializes and customizes the product. And this one will be, let me think later we're going to talk about the POW token, which is the token that we will use for distributing, channeling revenues to the ecosystem, to all contributors that are involved, to the investors who provided seed funding, but also to the platform itself. At the same time, it's a revenue distribution mechanism, but it's also a drastic public funding mechanism that we want to implement with the POW tokens. So there are more details on that. But that's just the basic structure and the basic roles. There is no exclusivity, there is no lock-in. We really try to solve the problem of where two platforms that once at the market is locked in, or that platforms usually start very cooperative and then turn extractive. So that's why it's important that these rule sets are hard-coded in smart contracts, or in the governance documents of the Powerhouse DAO. So there will be probably some rules there, and these will be encoded in governance documents institution or some type of governance documents, and the Powerhouse token holders will get in charge of enforcing these rules. So we have a mixture between technical and legal, let's call difference. But this part would be very important to not let that the system is captured by a single part. At the end of the day, people are not like obliged, are not locked in, and the fees that the system captures will be like much lower than in a centralized web to capture this money.
There you go. Cool. Maybe we can work.
Yeah, how will we thank? So
We should maybe just pitch the insurance. We'll go on to the next.
one of the markets that we're going to deploy is insurance and risk management platform for other products as well. And we are going to base that in a complex concept insurance. And we developed that first version for Maker. MakerDAO has a self-insurance fund, a 5 million self-insurance funds, and we are going to solve the problem of risk management, legal risk management. And in a nutshell, it is based on a concept that is called self-insurance. Basically, self-insurance is some capital owned and controlled by an organization. And an organization, when there is no insurance available, that happens very often in crypto. It is hard to get things like DNO. DNO is like the insurance for managers and centralized companies. Sometimes the risks are very hard to quantify or are very prohibitively expensive. So that happens a lot in crypto. So we are, the way that we did it with Maker, and we're going to use the platform, the Powerhouse platform for deploying this, is to offer to DAOs in a concept for creating self-insurance funds. And these self-insurance funds we create with our partners, risk analysis, risk assessment. The risk assessment includes a feasibility study which says how much capital has to be deployed and which risk could be captured, and then provide like a claim protocol and provide also the incorporation of the entities. So we specialize entities, how these work, like I'm not sure how we design it for MakerDAO, is that we have a component, the self-insurance component, and then the next step is to go to insurance markets and get insurance products on top of the self-insurance component. And that way, and the numbers are indicative, these numbers are like just examples. How could you use, for example, deploy 5 million, that's what MakerDAO has. You can go to the insurance market and leverage this capital and cover many other risks. Or get extended coverage or additional coverage for the same risk, or cover totally different risk. So this is like a very like modular, flexible approach. So what we are going to offer to other DAOs is this, not only like the study that the study and the policy, the claim process and everything, but the infrastructure for making this real, like the entities that you need to deploy entities that there are policy holders that take insurance contracts, so all like the project management of the risk and insurance, and also the legal and operational infrastructure. So that's in a nutshell, and if someone is interested in that, we can discuss later.
It's really exciting just to see you over the last week. Kind of just, I've heard lots of the same things, but it just sounds a lot like better and like kind of the story. So that's one part of the elephant, right? And I think that gives you an idea. I think Powerhouse is something like just about legal templates, but there's a whole other side of that. So next we have T. Actually, do you have your presentation? Is that in a?
Okay, cool. Hey everyone, I'm T, product manager of the core dev team at Powerhouse. I don't want to be in the way when I'm on the slides, but essentially I'll be talking about the more practical aspect of Powerhouse and what we're building. I would like to say that we try to implement some of the lofty promises of crypto and decentralization, and this time in a decentralized operations toolkit specific for scalable network organizations and other decentralized organizations such as DAOs. And the title of this talk or keynote was Scaling Distributed Computing for Decentralized Operations. Now the question is, why do we actually want to do that? And the reason why is pretty clear to some of our colleagues who have been in the trenches in the sustainable ecosystem scaling core unit and maker, and they've been facing some of the following problems. So DAOs have essentially been speed running open organization and governance frameworks, but they are currently really hitting those scaling and organizational limits. We're building big businesses, but they are maybe not ready yet to really break through to the mainstream, and that's one of the problems that we want to solve. And then on the other hand, we're seeing the whole AI revolution emerge, and it's pretty clear that LLMs and chat agents will become a part of those organizations, but we currently don't have the structured data capturing in place yet to supply all of the training data for the training data sets. And then additionally, we're also seeing that many of the promises of blockchain are blocked by the bandwidth and throughput battles that are currently going on, and those limitations are also playing up in decentralized operations scaling. So what we've been working on, and I'm only showing 4 of the 5 acts here, just to keep it summarized for you, but what we've been working on is a toolkit of native apps that I'll be explaining today, and that will guide us through how we try to solve some of these problems. So we have Fusion, our transparency dashboard and public collaboration platform, which is the public dashboard of the DAO where all information can be found. Then we have Connect, which is a navigation, collaboration, and reporting tool that contributors can work in by themselves in private or in shared drives. We have Renown, which functions as a decentralized identity and reputation hub, and we have Switchboard at the heart of it all, which is our open data API interface and the interface through which a DAO will set up their remote drives or their public drives. Now, I'll be referencing this infrastructure layer a couple of times, and here we can see in the center Switchboard, where, for example, Maker has set up a public drive, and which is attached to a Fusion instance, the dashboard where all the contributors would in the future be able to find back the data and the initiatives that have been working on and that are ready for publishing. Then in the top we see Connect, which is representing the editor tool or navigating tool where contributors are interacting with document models. Document models are floating above our Connect hub, and it's those document models that I need to zoom in a bit deeper to show you how and why we have been building the system in this specific way. So as I said before, Connect is where we capture the data, Switchboard is where we can query and read the data that we have been capturing in those document models, and Fusion then becomes our data visualization hub that provides a clear overview for everyone to interact with. So those document models, why did we actually choose them as a foundational element in scaling network organizations? It's because they have a really rich history in software architecture, and it's a good practice when you're trying to capture existing best practices or workflows that already are pretty established or well thought out. And they help us to embed some of the practices that are existing in an organization into a more structured template to capture data. So on one of the previous presentations, I got the question, start explaining it to me like I'm 5. So I did that this time, and a good metaphor might be a recipe book. So a traditional recipe book might just have a document with traditional text that you can not interact with. It might have some images, but a document model or a smart recipe might be a recipe where you can not only say what ingredients you have in the fridge, but also how many servings you want to come up with and what dietary restrictions you have. And that recipe starts to change based on those inputs. So that's how we should think about document models as a smart template with rules, that helps you to go through all the necessary steps and make sure that all of the information that you're adding or taking out of the document is captured correctly. It also helps us with automation and structure, so it captures our data in a very structured way. More about that later. It reduces errors and ensures consistency. And since it captures that data, it's a data-rich and interactive document. So why do we do that actually? Because we want new contributors in DAOs to stop getting lost in the same mistakes, to stop getting lost in the chaos, and we want to capture the experience and knowledge that is usually leaving a DAO when a senior contributor is on to greener pastures or other initiatives. We want to embed clear guidelines and priorities and directions into software instead of into the brains of people, or we want to exactly extract it from the brains and make it part of the collective intelligence of the DAO. It's also ideal for tracking and measuring crucial metrics and to capture this organizational data in a structured way, as I've mentioned already. So in the near future, we hope that there will be a rich set of document models available to everybody who's making use of our decentralized operations toolkit, where different DAOs can start borrowing principles from different organizations and see what fits them. So they would be able to compile and attract or select the different packages that make sense for their workflows or for the stage that they're in with their organization, and have their contributors work with them in Connect, where each of these document models opens up as an editor and is very comparable with decentralized Google Docs, Google Sheets, or similar. What we see here in the interface of Connect is on the left we have the different drives that a contributor can work in. So a public drive might contain the Maker public drive where the atlas is published and other documents that they want to interact with or contribute to. And then there are cloud drives or secure drives that might limit access to certain people so that smaller teams can also work in between themselves without any loss of data or any privacy issues. Obviously, we also have the local drives, which are just on your local device and allow a contributor to work in private. So one of the first implementations of a document model currently for Maker is the RWA portfolio. So we have a set of arrangers who are purchasing T-bills and other real-world assets with DAI, and they need to report back on those processes. And in this case, that happens through a document model where we see clear guidelines for the arranger to add assets to the portfolio, to attach transactions to those assets, and to make sure that they are reported correctly. We can see that within this document model, we have the potential to jump back to different stages. Here in the top, we can see that we can zoom into each of the assets and check all of the details in this comparison view. So that is a broad overview of where we are right now. So we have Fusion, which is a dashboard switchboard, our remote drive of Maker, and we have Connect, which is a local instance or the local client that the contributor can log into to listen or view all of the documents that are present on switchboard and interact with a local copy on their own device. So let's also introduce Renown, which is our identity and reputation hub, and which is currently making use of Ceramic. I think Joel from Ceramic is also in the audience. And this app essentially helps us to restrict any access to specific documents and to authorize any of the contributors that are making use of our system. That would happen by logging in with Renown, opening up your MetaMask, setting up a decentralized identifier, and delegating a session key to one of the apps, in this case Connect, which then also helps, in this case Alice, to start collecting her experience and reputation as she contributes to the DAO, and in the very end also helps us to verify all of the contributions that she has been adding to the documents or to the organization. Okay, so that should all be clear. Let's look a little bit more at the actual synchronization protocol. So here at the bottom we have our remote drive or our server instance where there is a scope of work document present. And these connect instances at the top represent two separate clients who are listening to that server instance and who are also looking at the local instance of that scope of work document model. So each time one of the contributors is making a change, that change is being propagated to the server instance, which then propagated to the other lab local instance of the other contributor. In this case, we see that within Connect and Switchboard, there's only one drive present. But it could also be that these two contributors have local drives, which they want to share between themselves with a peer-to-peer connection. And in that case, the diagram would look like this, where the maker drive has nothing to do with their private drives, but they just have established a connection between the two of them. So if we start to add more contributors to this schema, we can see that all of these different clients are all listening to the server instance, and we can see that that there is just a rich network of contributors all having great access to the documents and the files that Maker is running its organization on. What we want to have between all of these clients is we want to have eventual consistency. So we want to go towards a system that is scalable, just like our Web 2 platforms are scalable. And that's why we are making use of a flux or event sourcing and design pattern, where one of the users or the machines, as we just looked at, takes an action, for example, adding a real-world portfolio to a document model, which then triggers the reducer who takes that action and turns it into an operation. And that operation is added to the historic state of the document model as an event. So the historic state of the document model is a band-only event structure, which then results into the final state, and that final state renders a new version of the UI that the contributor is interacting with. So here we see, for example, an action. The type in this case was somebody has sent a message, and the message was "Hello World." We see a bunch more context in that message, such as the address of the person who has been sending it, as well as the signature that is being attached. That then gets turned into an operation with an index, since it's a list of operations or events that happened on the document, with a timestamp, a hash of the current state of the document, and a skip number in case we need to make use of some conflict resolution when multiple people are collaborating on the document. We can see the type and the actual content of the message, and that is how we are building our document model data structure. So there are self-contained data structures made out of chronological operations applied by a processor that result into a final state. And that is just ideal for a couple of reasons. It's ideal for financials and collaboration, because we can easily go back to previous states of the document and not only the last. We get to eventual consistency for our scalable distributed system, where both the front end and the back end are now talking with the same primitives or principles of these actions and operations. And we can always know who changed what at which time, since we have the decentralized identity component and signatures attached to the operations. As mentioned before, we synchronize only the latest changes, which helps us also to start having these documents being readable from their history on different locations that they are being stored, therefore decentralizing the data ownership of these documents. let's see. So this design pattern or this this principle that we're making use of is maybe pretty familiar to you, since blockchains also get synchronized by sending the different transactions across all of the nodes of the network. In our case, it is the operations that get sent across all the different drive storages and document model instances that are present on those drive storages. So here we can see that the set of document operations get sent from a remote server instance to the local devices of a contributor. And we can see that we're only synchronizing the latest changes. Now, the text is falling off, but it's also very cool because this allows us to decouple our operations infrastructure from the blockchain throughput. We essentially have a new system that allows us to be storage layer agnostic. Anybody who makes use of the document models can store them in their specific way. Currently, for this demo implementation, we are making use of Postgres. Are also exploring storing some of these document models on Ceramic. But different storage adapters would essentially allow an organization to figure out what is best fit for them and then pursue that route. So let's look at the read flow of all of this data that we have been writing over the past 15 minutes. So since we have been saving these all of the contributions in document models, and we have the final state, but also the historic event log, we can create really cool data out of these document models in the form of read models, such as operational data modeled in database tables that give us an overview of the latest amount of real-world assets that has been purchased or that has been reported on. Then if we start to include time series, then we can get to analytic read models that give us business insights into what happened when and at what volume or value. And it's those three sets of data that really turn these document models and these drives into self-contained databases that we then get API access to with Switchboard, which provides you with a GraphQL interface. And helps us to get direct access to machine-readable data and set up next actions or trigger automations when necessary. And I think with that, I've given you a good overview of three of the most crucial components of our system and how we intend to put them in place to scale distributed computing across these network organizations, where we have data capture and connects to document models that then get visualized on Fusion and Switchboard as an entryway for developers to work with machine-readable code and to query that data for different purposes or secondary use cases. The cool thing about these 4 apps, and another one is coming, Academy, is that we can set up different modules across these packages to, for example, make different use cases possible. In the case of an invoicing package, you can have an editor to submit your invoices in Connect. We have the data integration on the Switchboard, and we have the endless book available in Renown, and maybe a profit and loss state in Fusion once the invoicing cycle is over. We can have an auditing package with an editor in Connect, and all of the verifiable signatures in Renown with the reports on the final auditing being displayed in Fusion. We can set up a dev reputation package with proof of work of the different contributors and a dashboard of the reputation and contribution and experience that they have been gathering on Fusion. So yeah, it's a very flexible system that gives us a lot of optionality, and I think I'll stop here to see if there's any questions. It might have been a lot for someone.
No, really, I was wondering if you had the RWA editor, and I guess maybe you could talk about like other use cases that we're starting to see or work with other groups on that we have pushed some of this into.
Yeah. So I think this is a good slide.
Maybe talk about the make example where what they do with RWA.
Yeah, I was also saying like grants. Right.
Yeah. So RWA is now one way that we have an arranger. They need to report on the assets they purchase with DAI, and they do that through this structured file of the RWA report. But another use case that we're really seeing emerge is grant distribution. How do you keep track of somebody who has a good idea, wants to be a grantee, attracts some of those incentives, but then needs to report very consequential, very detailed on the progress that they've made, the TVL that they've gathered, the daily active addresses that are present on their contract. Like that's just a really clear-cut use case that we can pour into a document model and then report on to Connect. Since Connect is just an interface that anybody can get access to, that anybody can sign up to, and is just a very nice platform to report back on any of the activities that they've been pursuing.
Right. Is that on the Academy?
Yeah. So Academy, obviously there is a learning curve when working for decentralized autonomous organizations. There is not only a learning curve, there's also so much opportunity to grow within the organization and to maybe even capture all of the knowledge that you had from your previous jobs or projects that you worked on and distill them into a document model, therefore automating some of the processes and the work that you have been doing in the past. So all of the things that I just mentioned we'll hope to cover on Academy as a learning platform and as an upskilling platform for contributors.
You said it's storage agnostic, and so maybe could you what does that mean exactly?
Yeah, so the structure that we're currently storing the data of these Docker models in is essentially an event log. It's JSON file, and that makes it very applicable or suitable for any type of storage layers. If somebody wants to store them on mainnet, it's possible. We can create a storage adapter for mainnet, but that's not economically feasible, or that's not a long-term scenario. But we could explore so many different forms, such as IPFS, such as when we have RV ceramic. The nice thing is that we're not dependent on the evolution in blockchain throughput and bandwidth, and we can just move along with the evolutions of the industry. Yeah. All good?
Yes. Is this actually the last talk, or we have one more?
I guess this is
the file.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then. As many of you know, we are trying to build organizations at Powerhouse that enable pseudonymous contributions to open and decentralized organizations. So many of you, of course, know me from before, but these days I'm going by the name of Prometheus. So happy to be here. I am the founder of Powerhouse, and I will be talking a little bit more about what T already touched on, which is how we handle data in scalable network organizations. So my talk is called The Crisis of Consensus, Rethinking Decentralized Data in the Scalable Network Organization. The reason why this is important is because many people are asking us in this space. We come, of course, from the blockchain space. We have big ambitions. We do want to break outside of the crypto bubble. And we are building a data layer infrastructure with a lot of similar concepts that actually are already available on the blockchain. So we always get this question, why not just put everything on the blockchain? Is that what what it is all supposed to be about. And so for many things, we want to use the blockchain for the many new forms of collaboration that it enables. But we also think that the blockchain is maybe not always the answer that a scalable network organization needs for all its data. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And before we start to dive deeper into the actual data aspect, I want to make it clear what we mean when we say scalable network organizations. And so one thing to understand, especially for people in this space, is how are scalable network organizations different from DAOs? What are the similarities, but how are they different? And so the way we define a scalable network organization is threefold. So first and foremost, we are talking about open and transparent organizations. So very different from the traditional enterprise organization where there is a big wall that keeps everyone that is employed inside. And if you want to be hired by that organization, you need to pass the firewall test. And then once you're inside, you have access to all the resources and so on. We like to build more open and transparent organizations that are more freely accessible with a gradual onboarding path. We like to think of it as the end of traditional hiring and firing. An organization where you can, as an outside observer, peer into the daily operations of what's happening, get an understanding of how efficiently or not so efficiently the organization was operating. And really, when you want to start contributing, you can start small. You can pick up the odd task left and right, and then slowly work your way up with more tasks and projects, and ultimately become a full-time contributor to the organization. When we say open and transparent, we also mean open data and open source software. So those are some very important values that we think should be at the center of that organization. The reason why that's a good thing, the reason why that's competitive is because the organization can then maximally benefit from networking effects. To be open and welcoming is the best way to draw people in and grow the organization as it is progressing. Openness and transparency is not the only thing though. We do believe that the modern open scalable network organization should be based on a platform. We know for many, we're using software platforms every day. If you've been using Uber or Airbnb, then these are the kind of platforms that we are talking about. They're basically scalable marketplace platforms. They embed best practices into the software. When you are joining an Airbnb, the software, when you are joining Airbnb as a host, the software will take you by the hand and will lead you through all the processes that are needed to successfully organize a space where you can receive your guests, and then helps you how to charge for it in a way that is legally compliant and so on. So we imagine that when we are building scalable network organizations, this is one key aspect that we need to consider that will always be at the heart of it. The great thing about embedding everything in software is that we can also open up a gradual path towards automation. So everything that is available through the platform's user interface is a software. It's also available through APIs, and is also available for data integrations. And then, of course, with the advent of the big AI revolution, we need to make sure that our organizations are ready for that. So having a software platform at the heart of it really is the best way to be AI ready in that sense. And then last but not least, we do want it to be decentralized. So we want decentralized ownership, which very often comes in the form of lock-in avoidance. We want to have decentralized operations, and we want to have, as much as possible, decentralized infrastructure. But we see things really big. So the question is, the DAOs that we are seeing today in the space, why do they not scale? Why do we not have a decentralized Uber, a decentralized Airbnb, a decentralized Netflix, a decentralized WeWork? So what do we need to do to lift DAOs to the next level and get to that level of scale that we can actually compete with these kind of platforms? We, as you know, we have a background from makers, the Maker DAO and Maker organizations. So we really sat at the front row when Maker DAO started its big decentralization experiment at the beginning of 2021. We were part of the core unit, one of the contributor teams that helped other teams to work at the DAO, and we looked at questions with them such as how is working for the different than working for a traditional organization, how do you need to organize internally to be a good contributor team, how do you propose your mission and vision to the organization, how do you stay aligned, etc., etc. So we've got a good amount of first-hand experience with all the problems and the construction errors that early DAOs have, and we were part of that earliest and most advanced and biggest experiment, I think, still to date. We identified multiple failures in DAOs. I've listed a few here. Failures to deliver complex integrated solutions with a good user experience. We saw that at Maker, the individual teams were doing great work, but it wasn't coming together as a consistent product with good user experience and value unlock. They failed to reach consensus on direction and strategy. They failed to really plan and execute. There's a lot of talk about data governance, and it's a very interesting topic and a very important one, but we think that decentralized operations and execution actually don't get the attention that they deserve. And very often there's a lack of transparency, which might be a little bit counterintuitive because a DAO, by its very construction, is in a way transparent. But what we saw at Maker is that having the data available isn't the same as making the data consumable and creating valuable insights that will help you make informed decisions. And we saw, for example, that even though all information was somewhere on the Maker forum, it was very difficult to even find the answers to the most basic questions. Who are the different contributor teams? What are they working on? And so on. There is a lack of accountability that comes from the decentralized nature of the organization, and the fact that the organization's governance layer often doesn't have the expertise that is needed in every different domain, because there are so many in the kind of organizations with that complexity that we're envisioning. And we also noticed at Maker that there was a lack of sustainability. When the bear market kicked in, the core unit operating expenses kept going up, and it was clear that there was a point where even though Maker has a very high revenue, it wouldn't be profitable and it wouldn't be sustainable to continue operations in that way. So today we specifically want to look at, for that kind of ambitious scalable network organizations, what is the role of data in those kind of scalable network organizations? So I want to first recap the flow that we have, which was already explained by T. So we have a number of products that help contributors to participate in the DAO. Typically, the journey starts with Renan, where the user would log in with their Ethereum identity, and then they generate a secondary key, which they will use in our private contributors tool, Connect, to edit the kind of documents, the document models that T has been talking about in detail. Later then, this data is pushed to the more central data infrastructure of the organization, and this is Switchboard, the API that we are also building, and then ultimately Fusion, which is the public collaboration platform. With my talk today, I want to just walk through this and think about why or when should we be using blockchain as the storage layer there, and when is blockchain maybe not the best choice. As T also mentioned, the reason why we have that agnostic storage layer is because we want to be able to make that design decision for specific cases. Use blockchain where it makes sense, use decentralized storage layers where it makes sense, but if it's not possible or not useful to use them, we don't need to pay the price for all these nodes running in the network and storing the data in many different copies. We are currently supporting a number of storage adapters that are both centralized and decentralized. Many of them are still in the early tech prototype phase, but we're looking at storage adapters such as traditional relational databases, Ceramic, of course, we're working with, and also looking at IPFS to support storage in the network. So back to the question, when to use a blockchain, and I will present a proposed workflow for what I call pre-consensus data. Because if you think about when is blockchain really needed, you need to look at the defining characteristics. A blockchain provides consensus throughout the entire network, and it can also offer data availability. When do we need these properties, and when do we not need it? The model that I propose is that we think about data as really typically going through three phases. The first phase is the private peer-to-peer collaboration phase. The second phase is when the data first enters the public space, and then the third phase is blockchain as the official source of truth. Very critical element, but mostly important in the third phase of the data life cycle. So what is the first one? Private peer-to-peer collaboration. This is actually related to one of the insights that we developed from working at Nature. We were trying and succeeded in creating a very transparent organization. But what we found is that as the organization becomes more transparent, there is also a growing need for privacy at the edges. You can't do everything in the open. As humans, we have the need to work together in smaller teams, maybe when we don't feel ready to share what we are working on, have a private space where we can first draft things and then share it with our peers to make sure that we get some feedback before we can understand the test of sharing it with the wider space. The interesting thing with our document models is that we can give that to people. So with Connect, we give people that private space, and with Connect, you have 100% control over where you store your data, and keep the local on your machine, you can even work offline. And so you know that you can work in privacy on the early contributions as you are first drafting them up. So that should be very supportive of creative workflows. As I said, drafting, sharing with peers, maybe branching off different versions, trying different ideas, providing feedback, merging changes in, and then when you feel ready, maybe go to the next step. The interesting thing about our document models is that even though this happens in private, we are still able to propagate the best practices in the organization through the specific data models that we provide. T already showed, for example, real asset portfolio reporting. Real asset portfolio reporting is an important activity in MakerDAO, where we want to have certain rules that are in place and that are followed by the individual contributors. However, the arrangers that are responsible for managing the real asset portfolios at Maker, they would probably want first a public space, make sure that they have all the data in place that they want to report, and then when they feel good about the quality and the correctness of the data, then they want to push it on to the next phase. Thanks to our document models, we can embed these best practices in the software that these people are using in private. And so this is a very powerful tool to help these decentralized organizations maintain their collective knowledge and expertise. As I mentioned in the beginning, when we looked at the flow, even in this phase, the user would already use Powerhouse for now to authenticate with their Ethereum identity, and every change they make in the document is signed with a secondary key that is linked back to their identity. So we have traceability and transparency to the very edges of the data, but people can still work in private, and we think that's very important. So here is another example that we encountered in Maker. When we first started with SES, one of the concerns in the community was that there wasn't enough transparency around expenses of core units. So the core units that would receive their budget from the DAO, they were great teams, so I would say all of them had very good intentions, but people wanted to know, what is the budget spent on? Where is the money going to? And the reality was that most of these core units did have an internal accounting sheet, and were keeping track of where the money was going, and were managing it quite well. But there was so much detail there with, for example, individual compensation levels and so on, that they weren't really quite comfortable sharing it in that level of detail with the community. So what we built was an early version of the Connect tool that we're building today, call it the Core Unit Budget Reporting Tool, which would have private access to those very detailed sheets, it would create a summary, and then only that summary would be published in the public space. And so we think that is a very critical aspect of collaborating together in a scalable network organization to make that possible, to provide that layer of privacy. T already mentioned the example of the real asset portfolio documents that we are building for Maker today. As I mentioned, the arrangers, they will probably want to make sure, prepare the numbers in private, make sure everything is ready and double-checked before they want to share it with the broader public. So then, step number 2, entering the public space. We're still talking about pre-consensus information. And it's pre-consensus because the organization as a collective hasn't quite given the rubber stamp of officially accepting the data at this stage. But we are at the point where the data leaves the private bubble of the contributor and is published now into the open. And so it is ready for community engagement and feedback. And so we have 2 tools that are useful for that purpose. When the individual contributors are ready with the Connect editors and they feel good about the documents, that's the point where they will push those data to Switchboard and to Fusion. Fusion is the public collaboration and transparency dashboard for open and decentralized organizations. Now we started back at SES and was called the expenses dashboard. Since then, we've been building extra features to it to also cover not just finances, but also projects, work, and teams and people. Fusion is a UI and dashboards for human users, but we also want to be thinking about the future, and we know that scalable network organizations will need AI agents and automation more and more in the future. I think someone's looking from the back minutes there. And so that is the second avenue of publishing your private data to your organization, not for human consumption, but for AI agents or other data integration scripts and software. This is what Switchboard is, so it's a public data gateway for decentralized organizations. You have access there to all the data, all the numbers, all the individual documents, all the aggregated data that lives in the organization and that makes the operations run and tick. So this is an example of the reworked expenses dashboard, which is now part of Fusion. This is the kind of transparency that we've been creating at Maker. This is an example of a expense report or a budget statement where the Sustainable Ecosystem Scaling Core Unit, the predecessor of Powerhouse, have published their forecast for the coming 3 months of operations. Further down the page, there is more detail, but the important thing is the detail is at the level where the team is comfortable sharing it with the organization. Because there's internal details, as we mentioned, they stay private and in the private space in Connect. So this screenshot actually got a bit blurry, but just to give an idea, so these individual documents that people are editing in Connect, they are still available as budget statements on the dashboard. And of course, once we put all these documents from all these different contributor teams together, we can create really insightful and really detailed insights into the finances of the organization in this case. And so talking about data transparency that works, as I mentioned, we noticed at Maker that even though the data was technically available, it was actually not easy to find the answers to even very simple questions, such as what is the current expense burn rate and where is the money going to? Because we have all these formatted documents with a very clearly defined structure and the standardization of reporting between the teams, it is then very easy to grab the data and present the analytics overviews that our stakeholders are looking for. And so then we come to the third phase, and this is where blockchain absolutely shines. So the blockchain acts as the official source of truth, when the price of consensus and data availability is definitely worth paying. So once the user has edited the data in Connect, once they have published it to the organization, these documents, they are available in the public drive of the organization. And what we think is that there is a great need, and it is the role of the governance to basically pinpoint the exact version of the truth that the organization agrees with, that is the official status of the organization. And so what individuals, for example, for makers, what individuals would do is they would maintain documents, not just including the kind of operational data that we showed, but also governance data with the maker evolving rule set, which is called the Atlas. Everything would be there in the public drive. And if you want to make a change, you go through that flow that I was describing. You branch off the official document, you start in privacy, in Connect, by formulating changes that you would want to see proposed. You can work in private with your peers, seeking feedback and so on, before you publish that data to the public sphere. Then, when it is published to Fusion, there is an opportunity for other DAO members, the wider community, to interact with it, provide further feedback, liking, disliking, adding emojis, maybe doing more in-depth audits, and making sure that the proposal is really up to shape. And it's only then really that the organization wants to commit to include the proposal as official new truth. When that is the case, we put the proposal up for voting. The token community will include the proposal in on the voting portal, and then when the vote passes, that's the point where the data enters the official organization's consensus, and that's the point where we start to publish, or we publish the data on chain, so that it's available for everyone to see, so that it cannot be changed after the fact, and that people have full verifiability of the entire consensus building process that went ahead of it. And so this is the three-step flow that I wanted to present to you today, and think a little bit about the nuances of storing data in scalable network organizations, and hope to continue with you the discussion where we should store the data and whether blockchain is always the right choice, yes or no. So thank you for listening, and any questions or comments?
How is the process like to token holders really have to log or really changes?
So the way that the technology works is that if you have a public drive, the entire content of the drive, regardless how big it is, and it could contain, so for Maker, for example, think all the equivalent data that is today in the MIPS maybe, but also the operational data, everything, is really laddered up into a single hash. And one possibility would be that governance participants, they just rubber stamp the hashes that already went through a consensus building process in the organization. And then you can go one step further and say, okay, well, we don't really want to bundle everything because maybe there's one thing there we don't agree with, so we don't want to block all the other stuff from going through. And it's really up to an organizational design decision how granular you want to go. So, for example, you could separate budget approvals from other decisions. You could have a separate, in case of Maker again, like Atlas proposals and approval process that is separate so that you don't block other governance decisions simply by putting up a new Atlas proposal that might be controversial, for example. So I think that is part of the design process of the organization to determine which kind of decisions is the DAO good at making, and what level of detail should there be, and should there be parallel options that you vote on independently, or should we really bundle them together because element A doesn't make sense without element B attached to the one. So I think we need to be flexible there and look at it on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, it seems like pretty good fit for some kind of holistic approach where basically things go through a nest as a position or something like that. Because I then it takes people really up to what we come to this program of information consumption where on average totally uninformed token or the base would need to vote on things in moving along.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and that's why you need these different phases, because there's expert decisions, there's expert discussions. You really want to have those covered before it moves to an official vote. And so with this model, people can work on their proposal in private. They can then share it with an expert group that might have additional comments and feedback. The governance process might then move on to say, okay, how does the expert group stamp of approval? Now it moves on to an official vote. And the importance is that you have the flexibility of modeling these workflows and the tools to implement them quickly and cost efficiently. And so that's what we're trying to achieve. Any other questions?
Yeah.
No, sorry, go ahead.
About the steps, the data is likes and right.
The what?
There's the steps.
The first two steps? Yeah, so because we use storage adapters, and we need to think about like decentralization starting to become more of a multifaceted, nuanced thing as the space is maturing. And there is a difference between decentralized decision-making and decentralized storage, right? So you could have very decentralized decision-making, but then the storage is on an Amazon server. So with the storage adapters that we provide on the infrastructure layer, we're basically providing that part of the answer, is that you can be flexible. And I think as a small organization, maybe with not a lot of very solidly built out contingency mechanisms and so on. Maybe the team is small, it's a little flexible, like someone could disappear in one day or something like that. So then you probably would want to be sure that maybe your data is you have it on chain. It is available, so that if someone leaves the organization, they then delete their server and you lose your data. But maybe the decentralized storage layer might become too slow with the current technology when you are further scaling up. So then what you could do is maybe you put other mechanisms in place, like you have a more traditional cloud server for the operational data. It's only the governance data that lives on chain. And maybe you would want to have like a backup server that synchronizes everything that is controlled by someone else, so that you have that kind of organizational level of decentralization. And again, it's many of these considerations, they're really design decisions that need to be made, and we need to make that puzzle on a case by case basis. But with the model that we're presenting, it's up to you where you want to store it. In a traditional relational database, that's possible, is better scalable than decentralized. But in the beginning, when you're still small and it's possible, or for the very important data, you put it on chain and you have all the advantages of decentralized storage networks and availability. Make sense? Any other questions? Sounds like we're good. Well, thank you, everyone.